Imagine doubling or even tripling your rental income with just a starter size unit like a studio or a 1-bedroom condo right here in Toronto. It sounds too good to be true, right? Well, guess what? It's not. Welcome to the world of Airbnb and short-term rentals, an investment strategy that's no longer flying under the radar, but is still incredibly effective. If you're watching this, you're probably curious about how to make the most out of this opportunity, and I'm here to show you exactly how to do that right now. What's up everyone, my name is fNK&x and I'm a local real estate broker here in Toronto, and today I'm going to break down exactly how you can leverage a starter size unit here in the city to generate impressive rental income through Airbnb. Whether you're a seasoned homeowner or a first-time home buyer, this guide will give you the insights you need to start earning big with short-term rentals. By the end of the video, if you do have any questions at all or are looking for a little bit of guidance with any part of this process, you can reach out to me using any of my contact information below, and I'd be more than happy to help. So I do want to start off by saying that this rental strategy can really work for anyone. You don't need a certain type or size of unit as long as you follow the rules and regulations of not just the city, but also of your condo complex if you're in a condo. I do already have a video about starting an Airbnb here in Toronto and how to go about that entire process, and you can check out that video right here. But I wanted to create this introductory video specifically for those interested in Airbnb, but who are also new to home ownership or are first-time buyers. With the way home prices and interest rates have been for the last few years, this strategy may be the key to making home ownership achievable for you. In this video, I'm breaking down everything you need to know about starting an Airbnb here in Toronto. We'll cover how to purchase a unit, set it up for short-term rentals, the minimum down payment required and all the upfront costs, and then how to keep things running smoothly once they're up and running. Stick with me until the end and I'll go over the actual current market numbers for a small starter unit like a studio or a 1-bedroom condo, so you can see for yourself if this investment strategy makes sense for you. So let's get right into it. We'll start with the boring stuff first, just to get it out of the way, and that is the rules and regulations. While I won't go into every detail, the City of Toronto's website does have a dedicated page on short-term rentals with all the info that you need. If you're serious about this, I would definitely recommend going through all of it in detail, but here are the key points. So the city defines a short-term rental as homes or rooms that are rented on a short-term basis for a period of less than 28 consecutive days. The operators are required to register with the city, which I'll go over in a second, and secondly, collect and remit a 6% municipal accommodation tax on their rentals. Now in Toronto, Airbnb will actually add that 6% to your bookings, which is paid by the guests. They'll collect it for you and then submit it to the city. So you don't actually have to do anything for this. It all happens automatically. You're only allowed to Airbnb your principal residence. So this is the address listed on your driver's license, and it'll also be where you're paying insurance, taxes, and bills for things such as internet and hydro. And yes, the city will require a copy of this during the registration process. Also, starting September 30th, 2024, you may also be asked to provide an additional 2 documents along with your driver's license to prove that this is your principal residence. If you're in a condo, you also need to make sure your building allows short-term rentals because many downtown buildings do not. You can rent up to 3 bedrooms in your principal residence separately for an unlimited number of nights per year, or an entire home for a maximum of 180 nights per year. And if someone books for a longer stay, like a month or 2, it doesn't count toward your 180 night limit, even if it's booked through the Airbnb platform. As of now, you can rent out your entire unit or separate rooms under the same registration number, but starting January 1st, 2025, you will need to choose between registering as either an entire unit or as a partial unit for short-term rental. You can't have it both ways, and you'll only be able to switch your status on renewal. The registration process is fairly straightforward. You do it all online by registering on the city website. You'll need a valid government issued ID, which includes your address. So for most people, that will be a driver's license. You'll need to make sure that the name on the ID matches the name on the registration, and make sure that also includes your middle name, because your registration will get denied if there's any differences at all. You will then be required to pay a registration fee that is valid for 1 year and needs to be renewed every year. For 2024, that fee was $55.35, but it will jump to $375 starting January 1st, 2025 for both initial registration and then any future renewals. Now, after you submit the application, the city will review it. It can take as little as a few days and as long as a few months to get approved. I've heard both cases and it seems to be completely random. So my advice to you is to just make sure that the application is filled out correctly. That way it's more likely to just get approved. Once you've been approved, you'll get an email with a registration number that needs to be included in your listing on Airbnb. In fact, Airbnb will no longer let you list a unit for a nightly rental without this registration number. So it's not just an honor system, the platform actually requires it. There are a few other things that I do want to note here that have changed more recently in terms of the regulations. So I want to make sure that you're aware of them. Number one, if your application does get denied or revoked, you will not be allowed to register again for 1 full year. So again, it's really important that you do it right the first time and that you don't go over your 180 night limit. Number two, the city may ask to do a physical inspection of your unit, and that's okay. It's nothing to be alarmed about, but it does seem to be a randomized system. So if you do get that email when you register, I wouldn't worry too much about it, but do make sure that your unit is all set up and ready to go, or they will have to schedule a revisit. And then number three, the registration is tied to your address, not your name. So you can't create multiple registrations for the same address. Okay, so if you're still with me and this sounds like something that you may be interested in, it's time to get to the more interesting stuff, and that is where to start. So again, you can do this with any type of property. It can be a detached, townhome, or a condo. For the sake of this video, we're talking more starter homes, so that'll most likely be a condo. Now, there's only a handful of condo buildings that allow Airbnb in Toronto. A majority of them do not. And of the ones that do, some are definitely better than others. If you do want a list of those buildings, leave a comment below or reach out to me using any of my contact information in the description below and I'll get that to you right away. Now, I haven't talked about mortgages or pre-approvals or anything like that, but you do essentially want to make sure that you have this all sorted out. I'd say before you even start looking for a unit. You can do this by either talking to a mortgage broker or a mortgage representative at the bank. Again, if you are in this step of the process and you're not really sure who to go to, you can reach out to me and I'll send you a list of my most trusted mortgage brokers and lenders. Okay, so let's fast forward and say you have that mortgage pre-approval and you're looking through this list of units for sale that I've sent you in short-term friendly buildings and you find a unit that you like. The next step now is running the numbers and making sure it works financially. The first number we're going to look at is your upfront cost. So that would be when buying your unit, your down payment, which I'll touch on in a second, the land transfer tax and the legal fees. And then when you're setting up your unit, the cost of furniture. So for down payment, there is a minimum that you have to pay depending on the price of the unit. A lot of people seem to think that it's a set 20%, but that's not always the case. So if you buy anything for less than $500,000, which would most likely be a studio apartment in Toronto, the minimum down payment is 5%. So on $500,000, that would be $25,000. If you buy anything between $500,000 up to $1 million, the minimum down payment is 5% on the first $500,000 and 10% on the rest. So if you buy a unit that's say $550,000, like a 1-bedroom unit, then you're paying 5% on $500,000 or $25,000, and then 10% on the remaining $50,000. So that would be $5,000. So your total down payment needed in this case would be $30,000. So you don't really need 20% if you're looking to get into a starter unit in the city. You need closer to 5 to 10% depending on the price. Then you have land transfer tax, which is about 3% of the price of the condo in Toronto, but you do get a large rebate if you're a first-time home buyer. And then you have your legal fees, which can be a couple of $1,000s. In terms of furniture, I'd say for a 1-bedroom unit on average, you can probably spend between $5,000 to $6,000 for all the essentials to get started. So upfront, I would say you need about $40,000 total to get started with a starter size unit. Okay, so now that you have all your upfront costs figured out, you need to figure out what the cash flow would look like on a monthly basis if you were to purchase this unit. To figure out the potential revenue, you look at comparables in the area. What are some similar Airbnbs? What revenues do they make? And what revenue can you therefore expect to make? There's a few third-party sites and platforms that give you access to this data, such as Price Labs or Beyond Pricing. Those are probably the two biggest ones where you can look at this data and get an idea of what you'll be making based on the area or similar listings. AirDNA is another big one that does have a lot of analytical features if you have a paid subscription, but even the free version does give you a lot of this data as well. Next, you'll look at your expenses. For expenses, you'd factor things in like mortgage payments, maintenance fees, annual property tax, and property insurance. All information that is readily available. Really all expenses that you'll have whether you do long or short-term rental, with the exception of your upfront cost for furniture and sometimes a little bit of extra maintenance costs as well. So it's definitely important to figure this out first to make sure that the investment is financially sound and that it's something that you can afford. I did create an Airbnb calculator where you can pretty much plug in all these numbers and it'll give you an idea of how much your net profits will be. I'll leave a download link in the description below and you can go check that out. Now, obviously, the longer you do this, the better, because the furniture is a one-time cost, and as you pay more and more into your mortgage, number one, you'll have more equity in the property, and then number two, when it comes time to renew your mortgage, the loan amount will be lower. Okay, so you found a unit, you've done the research, and you've gone ahead and made a purchase. The next step now will be to furnish the unit. I would not go overboard on this step or buy any high-end furniture. I'd be looking for more durability or things on sale. Just make sure you stick to the budget. The Airbnb platform actually has a list of all the essentials you should have in your unit, from things like toasters, spoons, forks, and linens to bigger items such as couches, beds, and TVs. A good way to go about furnishing the unit or getting some inspiration would be to actually log into Airbnb and search your area and just see what the units look like in your area, because those will really be your main competition. Okay, so you furnished the unit and applied and have gotten approved for the short-term rental license. You can now list your unit on Airbnb with your registration number. The listing process on the platform is very straightforward, and the website kind of guides you through the entire process. Next, you'll need to hire a cleaner that will come in after every stay. Nowadays, there's tons of cleaners that provide this service, and the process is pretty much 100% passive and automated. They'll connect directly to your Airbnb calendar, so you never really need to communicate with them other than paying them every month, or if they need to tell you to restock on any essential items such as toilet paper or garbage bags, for example. In terms of the actual restocking, you can do this yourself probably once every few months, or again, I know some cleaners can take care of this process for you for a small fee. Most of the communication process with guests can be fully automated directly through the Airbnb platform, but you may need to answer the odd request here and there about things like restaurant recommendations or early check-in requests. Pricing wise, again, I'd use a third-party app like Price Labs that will price your unit automatically based on the area and the demand for a very small monthly fee. And then the last thing I do want to talk about is that concern that someone may come into your Airbnb and just trash the unit or have a big party, because that's probably one of the biggest concerns with short-term rentals. There's a few ways you can really minimize the chance of that happening to pretty much 0%, and that's by number one, including a large security deposit requirement with every booking directly through the platform, and then number two, by setting your minimum night stay to nothing less than 3 or 4 nights. That way, no one can book just a Friday or a Saturday to host a party. It's very unlikely that someone wanting to throw a party will be willing to pay for a 3 or 4 night stay. Also, to give you that added security blanket or peace of mind, it is a requirement now that you purchase short-term rental insurance to replace what would have been your standard landlord insurance. And to top it all off, Airbnb also offers their standard blanket insurance as well with every booking. As long as you document everything and take lots of pictures, you can usually get back your money for any items that are damaged. Now, you can obviously do all of this by yourself, or you can hire a management company who will do this all for you, but then take as much as 20 to 25% cut of your profits. In my opinion, this process, once up and running, really becomes fairly hands-off, but if you really want to be 100% passive and want nothing to do with it other than collecting your check at the end of every month, then a management company may be a good idea. And that's it. You are now ready to go live with your listing. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, I will now go through a couple of real life examples so you can really see the numbers for yourself. If you do have any questions about any part of the process, from the purchasing side to the management side, feel free to send me a message or leave a comment below and I'll do my best to help. So as of now, the average price of a studio condo downtown Toronto is around $450,000 to $500,000, and the average price of a one-bedroom condo is around $550,000 to $575,000. So I thought it would be a good idea to run some numbers with actual live listings on the market right now. That way you have an idea what kind of money something like this can bring in. So let's start with the studio first. So I've gone through the list of all available studio condo units in short-term friendly buildings, and this one really stood out. So we'll use this one for our example. I'm going to plug everything into my Airbnb calculator and see what the final numbers look like. So the address is 210 Victoria Street, Unit 4010, and it's located at Yonge and Dundas. It's listed for $475,000. I'm gonna skip the average daily rate for now, but we'll come back to that in a second. The monthly maintenance fee is $356 per month and actually includes water, heat, and hydro, which is pretty rare. The annual property tax is about $1,790. For the mortgage, we'll use the average rate right now, which last I checked was around 5.1%, and we'll put that over 30 years. For internet, let's say $100 per month, insurance $50 per month, and then hydro utility is $0 because this one's included in the maintenance fee. For the down payment, let's say you put 5% down, which is $23,750, and the land transfer tax, when I checked, is $3,475 if you're a first-time home buyer. Okay, next we're going to find out how much on average a unit like this one makes on Airbnb nightly. So I'm using Price Labs. They have a revenue estimator app. I plugged in all the details like location, number of bedrooms, or in this case, a studio, and then chose only units with 5+ reviews so I know they're currently active, and also units that have a minimum night between 1 to 4 nights. That way we don't get the long-term units in there. The only number we want here is the average daily rate, which is $215 per night. So I'll plug that into my calculator. So we can see with the current numbers, you'd pretty much be breaking even at about $23 of monthly cash flow and making about $276 for the year. This is with a 5% down payment, which is the minimum. Let's say you brought that up to the standard 20%. Now you're looking at about $409 monthly of positive cash flow and about $5,000 net annually. Now these numbers may not seem too great, even with 20% down, but let's compare this to a scenario where you buy this unit as an investment and rent it out long-term through a traditional lease. So I have a similar calculator for long-term rentals and I plugged in all the same numbers. For the rental rate, I took a look at MLS, and a unit like this one rents for about $1,900 per month. So again, with 5% down as a long-term rental, you're looking at a negative cash flow of about $1,050 per month, which is about $13,000 for the year. Even at 20% down, you're still losing $670 per month. Here's a summary so you can see the numbers side by side, and you can really see here the power of short-term rental. Many people cannot afford to pay out of pocket $1,000 per month, but through Airbnb, owning something like this now becomes possible. Also, a side note, I know the calculator did not include the cost of furniture because it's not a recurring cost. So that first year with a studio, you're going to break even at 20% down and then be slightly negative with 5% down. But again, that will only be for your first year. The longer you do this, the better the return. I want to do one more quick example with a 1-bedroom unit. Although the bigger you go here, the higher your cash flow will usually be. But the point is, it can be done with any size unit. Even if you're just breaking even, it's worth it because you're essentially getting to hold that property for free while it appreciates in value in the long term. So for the 1-bedroom unit, I went through the list and I picked this property, 15 Iceboat Terrace, unit 3111. I plugged in the numbers already just to save us some time. So the unit is listed at $535,555. It has a maintenance fee of $371, annual property tax of $1712, and the average daily rate for something like this is $250 per night. So again, at 5% down, you're looking at about $100 in positive cash flow, so pretty much break even. And at 20%, you're netting about $550 per month. If you compare this to the same unit doing long-term rent, a unit like this one rents for about $2,150 per month, so you're looking at negative $1,100 per month, or about $13,500 for the year at 5%, or negative $689 per month if you put down 20%. Again, here is a summary of the numbers side by side so you can really see the power of short-term rentals. Also, a side note, when you're comparing the short to long-term, with the short-term rentals, you're only going to be renting your unit out for 180 nights per year. So these numbers are for pretty much half the year booked, and then the other half, your unit is empty. With a long-term rental, your unit is rented pretty much the entire year. And that's it. It's actually unreal, the power of running an Airbnb in Toronto, where you can seriously multiply your property's cash flow, even if you're a first-time home buyer or are working with a smaller starter size unit. There's lots of potential, and depending on your end goal, there's lots of ways to do it. Again, if you have any questions or want to dive deeper into the world of short-term rentals or Toronto real estate, you can book a call with me or reach out to me using any of my contact information below, and I'll be more than happy to chat. I'll see you guys on the next one.